Many arguments against the possibility of miracles rely on the same kind of circular reasoning. For example, some people define a miracle as the most improbable kind of event, and then say that we can never say that a miracle has happened because it's, by definition, the most improbable explanation. But how would we know that it's the most improbable kind of event? Only if we assume that they never happen. Are miracles even possible, or do they violate the laws of nature? In this video, I'm going to tackle the biggest argument against the possibility of miracles and see if it stands up to scrutiny. This is part 1 of a 5-part series on miracles, so be sure to smash that subscribe button so you don't miss anything. As a Christian, I believe that God does amazing, incredible things, both now and in history. So when times are hard or someone I know gets sick, I often ask God to intervene in miraculous ways. Maybe you could relate to this. In the world that we're living in right now, a lot of us could use a miracle. But are miracles even possible? Several years ago, I was at a discussion group in England, and we were all sitting around the table having a conversation about God, about miracles, and about the resurrection of Jesus. We were having a pretty great time until one person just stopped and said, "Look guys, miracles don't happen. Dead bodies stay dead. End of story." He didn't need to investigate or look at the evidence. Miracles are just impossible.
Case closed. I win.
When people make this claim, a lot of them don't realize that they're actually echoing the claims of the philosopher David Hume. In his 1798 work of Miracles, he made a big claim that he would disprove miracles for all time, for all civilized people. And I'm not just bringing him up to say, hey, here's some ancient philosopher that I can beat up. I'm bringing him up because a lot of people reference him today as though his arguments were successful at disproving miracles. What was his argument? Well, his main challenge was that a miracle is, by definition, impossible.
But that's simply not possible.
Why isn't it possible?
It's just not.
Why?
He said this: "A miracle is a violation of the laws of nature, and as a firm and unalterable experience has established these laws, the proof against a miracle from the very nature of the fact is as entire as any argument from experience can possibly be imagined." There's some antiquated phrasing here, so let me try to sum it up in modern terms. He's essentially saying this: because no one has experienced a miracle, we know that the laws of nature cannot be broken. A miracle would break the laws of nature, and therefore no one has ever experienced a miracle. What's the problem with this? It's circular reasoning. He uses the conclusion in his premise when he says that no one has ever experienced a miracle. Circular reasoning is just saying the same thing twice, and it doesn't prove anything. It's like saying garlic bread tastes good because it's delicious, or you must obey the law because it's illegal to break the law, or Madagascar is in North America because it's located on the North American continent. None of these statements are actually providing any reason to believe that they're true. They're just restating the same assertion twice in a row. Now, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily false. The first one is true. Garlic bread is delicious. Some would even say that garlic bread is so delicious that it proves the existence of God.
Checkmate, atheists.
But none of these statements provide any reason to justify why we should believe in them. Many arguments against the possibility of miracles rely on the same kind of circular reasoning. For example, some people define a miracle as the most improbable kind of event, and then say that we can never say that a miracle has happened because it's, by definition, the most improbable explanation. But how would we know that it's the most improbable kind of event? Only if we assume that they never happen. Besides that, improbable events happen all the time. The question isn't whether it's intrinsically probable or not, but which way does the evidence point? One more example. Some would say that those who claim to see a miracle are always either lying or mistaken. But how would we know that? Only if we assume that miracles never happen. We're assuming the very thing that we're trying to prove. The brilliant British author G.K. Chesterton put it well when he said, "An extraordinary idea has arisen that the disbelievers in miracles consider them coldly and fairly, while believers in miracles accept them only in connection with some dogma. The fact is quite the other way. The believers in miracles accept them, rightly or wrongly, because they have evidence for them. The disbelievers in miracles deny them, rightly or wrongly, because they have a doctrine against them." Personally, I found this to be so true because when we actually examine the data related to miracles with an open mind, the evidence is pretty incredible. To give just one example, there was a survey done by Barna Research Group in 2016 where 1,000 American adults were asked the question, have you experienced something that can only be described as a miracle of God? Nearly 2 out of every 5 said that they had. Extrapolating that to the entire country, that means that over 94 million Americans have experienced something that they can only describe as a miracle from God. That is incredible. Is it likely that all 94 million Americans are either lying or deceived? Remember, it only takes one example of a genuine miracle to prove that miracles are possible. I think it would take a huge leap of faith to believe that all of them are either lying or mistaken. Instead, I think we can conclude that miracles are not only possible, but that they happen today. Here's the question: how would your prayers be different if you believed in miracles? Asking for a miracle doesn't mean that one is guaranteed, and we'll be discussing that later in this series. But how many miracles have we missed out on just because we've been unwilling to ask? James 4:2 says, "You have not because you ask not." So let's ask boldly, believing that God has the power to do miracles. Again, this is the first of 5 videos on this subject, so if you don't want to miss any of the other ones, hit the subscribe button, and go ahead and put a comment if you have a question that you'd like me to address in a future video, and we'll see you in the next one.